My number one film that shaped my feeling of the outdoors is Into the Wild from 2007. So this is a movie directed by Sean Penn, actually co-written by Sean Penn as well, starring a lot of big name actors: Emile Hirsch, Catherine Kinnear, Hal Holbrook, Vince Vaughn, Jenna Malone, Kristen Stewart, William Hurt, amongst others. Just a really large cast. The IMDb plot summary: after graduating from Emory University, top student and athlete Christopher McCandless abandons his possessions, gives his entire $24,000 savings account to charity, and hitchhikes to Alaska to live in the wilderness. Along the way, Christopher encounters a series of characters that shape his life. And just to note, again, this is a true story about a real kid that did this. Unfortunately, it also ends with his death as well, much like the last film I talked about. And I read the book in high school, actually, and was loved. The book really hit me. And this movie, I think, just captures what makes that movie so brilliant, which is, this movie is a lot about how the outdoors, much like the Grizzly Man, Timothy Treadwell, the outdoors can be a place where you go to like purify yourself from the toxic sides of civilization. If you have a void in your life, you go to the outdoors to try to have that void be filled. But what I think Christopher learns in this film, and I believe this as well, the outdoors cannot fill that void, and only love and human connections can. So the isolation that he's seeking as his salvation is actually not only his undoing, but ironically, in the end of at least the movie, it sort of, he comes to this realization that actually the love from his parents that he never got is what was missing, and that's what he needed to pursue. Instead of going away from them, he should have been trying to connect with them. But there's a lot of other things I'll say about the film, but I just want to get your initial thoughts. Had you seen this movie before, and what was your takeaways from it?
Yeah, I've seen it before, and it hit me pretty strongly when I saw it. Hadn't seen it since. It's a pretty heavy and harrowing movie, and not something that I would put on my sort of rewatchable list, even though I watch a lot of movies that are very depressing and sad over and over again. But there's something about this movie that it takes you to a pretty dark, maybe lonely place. That's the thing, which is sort of makes it difficult to kind of watch it again and again. But it's masterfully put together. It held up pretty well on maybe third viewing or so in prep for this podcast. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the thing, right? Like, you can't be running away.
Right.
You have to face your fears, no matter what trauma you might have from childhood or what have you. You have to face it. You have to get real help. The thing that struck me the most on this viewing, which I don't think I remembered much of from my earlier viewings, was just the plight of the people left behind. The parents, the sister, all the people that he meets. Obviously, the Hal Holbrook scene is incredible. Gets him an Oscar nomination very deservedly. But that's the stuff that really made me so sad, that I'm like, yeah, you're on one hand poo-pooing on society and all its trappings and everything, and you want a better life and what have you, whatever higher moral grounds you think you're on, but you're hurting everybody. Sure, your parents did things to you, but it was a while ago also. And your sister, who's supposed to be your supporter in this, and poor thing, she doesn't even hear anything from him for years and years. And that part really hurt me this time, just kind of watching it. And then, of course, you feel sorry for him too at the end, because it's such a tragic ending. And like you said, like when he's dying and he has these visions of just his mom and his dad like hugging him, and bright sunlight and all of that is heartbreaking, so
yeah, I think that's the tragedy of this film too, that he, even as he's going through his journey, because it's not immediately in Alaska, he hitchhikes, like the plot summary says, across the country, meets all these various people, and does build connections with them. I mean, Catherine Kinnear really does sort of take him on as sort of like a surrogate son, and is very concerned about his parents, and there's love that all these different folks are showing. And with the final one of Hal Holbrook really telling him, as this old man, he's like, look, the thing I've learned, the joy of life is human relationships. That is the joy. And he has to repair some relationships in his life. And that's sort of what he's going through. But he cares for Christopher. But Christopher still is pushing all these people away from him through this entire journey, because he's trying to get to this place in Alaska where he thinks he's going to find salvation. And yeah, the isolation can, like in the other movies we've talked about, bring about self-reflection and help you understand things about what you need. But I think what this message of the movie is too, that it is not the solution. Now, it might be part of their journey of finding what that solution is, but you're going to have to go back to civilization. You have to go back to the people that you love, or try to find love with other human beings and other relationships, because that's what's going to fill the void of love. Has to be filled with love. It can't be filled with what he was trying to do, which was kind of get away from it all because it was sick and
Right.
twisted or not what he wanted. And he thought being alone would give him that. And even actually tragically too, there's a scene at the end of the film too, when he writes in his book, and I don't know if this, I can't remember if this was in the book or if this is true, but he's again sick, and he's at the end of the movie, he ends up in this bus in the middle of the wilderness in Alaska by himself, and he's reading, I think it's like some Dostoevsky, and in there he puts in this line, he writes in, "Happiness is only real when shared." And
Mm-hmm.
that's as he's having these realizations, like, oh my gosh, like his sister loves him so much. You can tell with this heartbreaking narration that she's
Mm-hmm.
giving Jenna Malone throughout the film, and he just pushed it all away, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
and paid the ultimate price by dying. And you think too that he must have learned this lesson in real life as well, because part of the film he like throws away his name and comes up with another name. Alexander Supertramp is like the name he
Yeah.
goes by. So he's like giving away his entire identity in hopes of finding something else. And then at the end of the film, when he is one of the last things Christopher did in real life was post like a message. He puts it next to his body as he's dying, and he signs it with his
Yeah.
actual name.
Yeah.
So he's coming to realization of who he's like, no, actually, I'm not going to run from myself anymore. This is
Yeah.
what I need. I'm reaffirming who I am. But again, unfortunately for him, it was too late, because
It's too late.
he tussled with the wild, and you can't. We're not meant to be there, especially folks who grew up in civilization. Like, he's not an Inuit. He doesn't have that respect for the wilderness that the other, basically the Inuit characters in Never Cry Wolf, or the one Inuit in Grizzly Man, when he's saying, hey, there's this boundary, we're part of nature, but there is a
Right.
separation. He thinks that blurring that line or jumping over it will give him salvation, and unfortunately leads to his end, which is
Yeah.
really sad but powerful too. And that's why I love this book so much. And I think Sean Penn just does a fantastic job with this film, even though, yeah, it's a very hard watch. It's not an uplifting film, even though the message at the end of love and human relationships is so positive, but it's spun in such a way that's tragic because of what happens to Christopher in the
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. Yeah. The love and relationship part is the key one, but I also think the other thing is that you can't escape the work that you have to do on yourself.
Right. You're
You
right.
have to
Actually.
face your
Yeah.
demons. You have
Right.
to kind of really get into it and figure out why are you behaving and why are you thinking the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, other people are part of it, but ultimately you have to kind of put in the work as well.
Right.
So
And he was running away from that, I
he
think,
was running away from
unfortunately.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I haven't seen all of Sean Penn's directorial ventures, and there have
Mm-hmm.
been many
I haven't
since.
either. Yeah.
And from whatever I've read, and they're always at Cannes, and they don't sort of really land super well from what I've heard. But this one is like really amazingly done. I will say it felt a bit indulgent to me,
Mm.
like in a very kind of, first film sort of maker way.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think the movie very strongly communicates his ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and it's beautifully rendered. Of course, he's a great actor, so he lets all the actors shine.
Oh, yeah.
Like some
Great
of these
performance in this.
scenes, like everybody, Hal
Mm-hmm.
Holbrook we mentioned, like William Hurt just walking on the streets and just kind of kneeling down on the
Oh,
road.
yeah. Yeah.
It kind of got me,
Mm-hmm.
and especially watching this. I know how hard it is, even though all these people are trapped in whatever lives they're on, but it's not easy to bring up a family, provide for
Right.
a family.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just doesn't happen on itself. Like you have to make sacrifices and everything, and then to sort of have your son just vanish
Mm-hmm.
for years and years. How tragic is that? It made me so sad to see that.
Oh, definitely. And obviously his parents were not good parents. Like
No,
they did not give him or his sister the love that they
no.
needed, but at the same time you empathize with it too, like you said. And
Yeah.
that's the tragedy of Christopher just abandoning these people that they do care about him, even if they're not expressing the right way. Instead of trying to repair those relationships, he disregards them, and that hurts everyone that he wants love from.
Yeah.
He's actually hurting every single one of them along the way, which is the tragedy of what he did, and the tragedy of a lot of people can fall into this trap really easily too. And I think that's also what Hal Holbrook is trying to teach him, because he
Yeah.
also had a strained relationship with his family, and he realizes that forgiveness
Mhm.
is a very human emotion and something that can be very positive, and helpful to the person doing the forgiving. And unfortunately, again, at that moment, at least for me, when I watched him, it's like, oh, you learn the lesson, Christopher. Like, get in the car and go back to your family. Like, why are you continuing on? Why do you still feel like you need to go to Alaska? Didn't you learn everything right from Hal Holbrook and all the other people? Why do you still need to do this? It's frustrating that he didn't immediately just go back, and then embrace his parents like in that vision, but instead could only do it in his hopes and dreams on his deathbed.
And the tragedy of it all is that, I don't know if Sean Penn and the DP intended this, like, obviously the outdoors are beautiful, but they're not inviting or magical the way they are in the other movies that we've talked about. They are very majestic, obviously, but I think because they are from the point of view of this character, and we see Christopher like enjoy, like, I think the early parts of when he's made it to the magic bus and he's getting in a bit of a routine, and you see him enjoy the beauty around him for a little bit, but otherwise not really. Like, he's kind of on the run even through the wilderness. Like, he never really takes a moment to reflect or take in, even though he's like writing his journal, and you could argue that's a reflection of some sort. But it's a great lesson that, we as humans, we can tell ourselves that, oh, just because I made a bunch of journal entries, I'm doing the work and I'm reflecting. You may not be, actually.
Exactly.
Or you might be traveling the world and getting your passport stamped by all these exotic places, but if you haven't really made human connections or taken the time to understand where you're at, or give something of yourself and then take something of what that place has to offer, or enrich yourself in a certain way, then these are just passport stamps. They're nothing. They don't mean anything. So I think the movie does a good job of not kind of glorifying the outdoors. Like, it's from his eyes.
Right. And it's a harsh reality. Very quickly, like you said, he's screaming at the sky to give me food. I'm so hungry. Where all the animals are gone. There's no anything. And that's, nature is an unforgiving mother, whatever you want to call it. Or like Werner Herzog said in Grizzly Man, it's like a harsh world. And that actually harmony is not what unites us. It's chaos. Is what unites man and nature is complete chaos. It's not something magical. And which I think I go back and forth between that and then, how Ang Lee presents the magical realism of Life of Pi. Like, because I feel that in certain places, but it is sort of that reminder of that yes, that is part of it, but it's not everything. And there's the dangers there. And I think to your point too, like Sean Penn and his DP and this team too, the production team, just made the wilderness not look inviting. Like, I don't want to be here. This looks awful. Like, get out, like the second that he's there in Alaska, like, this is not a place you should be at all. Like, you're a kid, like, go back to your parents.
Yeah. I think to your point, like, it's both things. I think the onus is on you as a person. Like, we have to make those choices of how are we going to approach it. We can approach it with kindness and wonder, but then take that back into our real lives and do something with it. Or we decide to just, foolishly just make it our own and just assume that this is going to solve all of our problems, or it's going to be our best friend. No.
Exactly. And again, unfortunately, I think he learned this lesson too late, which is sad, but his story hopefully will help people understand this and not, inspire similar journeys, which actually, I guess in real life, a lot of kids were trying to get to that bus and died. And they actually had to get rid of, like, move the bus and take it out of the wilderness because too many people were inspired by his tale, and they were dying as trying to make it. It
wasn't a cautionary tale. It was an inspirational tale.
Unfortunately for some people, it was, which is too bad. Like, they took the wrong lesson from this, I think. But fantastic film.
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.